Peppa Pig's house looks simple. A tiny triangle, a red roof, a little house sitting quietly on top of a hill. But the moment you stop treating it like a cartoon background and start treating it like a real place, everything falls apart. Because this house doesn't behave like a normal house. It doesn't fit inside itself.
What?
It has rooms that appear once and vanish forever, and it seems way too prepared for problems nobody ever talks about. So today, we're opening up Peppa Pig's house room by room, detail by detail, to figure out what's really going on inside that innocent-looking triangle on the hill. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. The first problem starts the moment you imagine the house in real space. From the outside, Peppa's house is tiny, it's narrow, it's steep. It's basically a child's drawing brought to life. One small structure, sitting alone, with barely enough width to fit a staircase, let alone an entire family's life. But inside? Inside, the house turns into something else entirely. There's a full living room with space to run around, a kitchen with counters, appliances, and room to move. A dining area that comfortably fits the whole family, multiple bedrooms upstairs, hallways, corners, closets, and then, out of nowhere, the show casually introduces one word that breaks everything. The cellar. A cellar means underground space.
I think there's a torch in the cellar.
Okay, I'll go and get it.
It means stairs going down. It means storage. It means depth. But where exactly is this cellar supposed to go? That hill Peppa's house sits on suddenly stops feeling decorative and starts feeling structural. Because the only way this house works is if a huge part of it isn't visible at all. Like the triangle on top is just the entrance, and everything else extends into the hill underneath. And the show knows how strange this sounds, because it doesn't try to explain it. It just drops the idea once and never mentions it again, which is always suspicious. What makes this even stranger is that the show accidentally admits the problem later. In episodes involving vehicles, tents, or camper vans, Peppa repeatedly notices something very specific. She points out when things are bigger on the inside. She treats it as normal, familiar, almost comforting, like she's seen this kind of impossible space before, like at home.
The camper van is just like our little house.
While we're on holiday, it is our little house.
That's not a throwaway line. That's the show telling us the rules of this world are broken. And the characters know it. So now we're left with two possibilities. Either Peppa Pig exists in a universe where space just doesn't matter, or the house is hiding most of itself underground. And if that's true, then suddenly a lot of other details start making sense. Because Peppa's house isn't the only strange one. Every single house in Peppa's world sits on a hill. Not a gentle slope, not a small rise. A dramatic, isolated hill, no streets, no neighbors next door, no shared walls. Every family lives alone, elevated, separated. At first, it feels like a visual style choice, until the weather gets involved. When it rains in Peppa Pig, it doesn't drizzle. It floods, water rises, land disappears, paths vanish. And yet, no one panics. Peppa looks at the water surrounding her house and calls it a desert island.
House is a desert island.
Muddy puddles!
She's excited. She's safe. Her house is untouched. So is everyone else's. Because every house is high enough to stay dry. That's not luck. That's planning. This town wasn't designed for convenience. It was designed for survival. And that changes how you look at Peppa's house completely. Because a house built into a hill with extra underground space in a town designed to handle flooding isn't just a house, it's a bunker. Which brings us to one of the strangest details of all. The name of the town. It's not Pigtown. It's not Animal Village. It's not something generic. It's Peppa Town. An entire town named after one child. And not just in a meta branding way. Inside the world of the show, that's genuinely what it's called. The characters say it, maps show it, signs confirm it. So why? Why would a whole town be named after a 4-year-old pig? And the more you watch Peppa interact with the world around her, the stranger this becomes. Peppa doesn't act like a normal kid. She gives orders. She corrects adults. She interrupts authority figures. And nobody stops her.
They're really not that important.
What do you mean, Mummy? They are very important, aren't they, Daddy?
There's even a moment where Peppa tells the Queen of England what to do, and the Queen listens.
Never mind, we can walk around it.
You can't walk around a muddy puddle.
No?
No, you have to jump in it.
No hesitation, no consequences, no correction. She obeys. That's not how power normally works. Unless Peppa isn't just another citizen, unless Peppa's family matters more than we're told. If Peppa Town was founded by her family, if her house sits on the highest hill, if her home is larger inside than it should be, then suddenly the layout of the town starts to look less random and more intentional. Like everything was built outward from one central family, and that family's house needed to be safe, hidden, prepared, which might explain why certain rooms appear once and never again. Why storage spaces feel oversized, why the cellar is mentioned so casually and then forgotten. Those aren't accidents. They're necessities. Because if you were designing a house to protect a family during floods, disasters, or long periods of isolation, you'd want hidden space, extra room, supplies, torches. You'd want a house that could survive without help. And Peppa's house looks exactly like that. A cheerful cartoon disguise wrapped around something much more serious. So maybe Peppa's house isn't strange by accident. Maybe it's strange because it was built for something the show doesn't talk about anymore. And maybe the reason everything feels slightly off is because we're only seeing the friendly version of a place that was designed to handle much worse. Once you accept that Peppa's house might be hiding more than it shows, the next thing that starts to feel wrong is how selective the house is with its rooms. Because some rooms appear constantly, and some rooms feel like they exist, but only when the story absolutely needs them. Take the living room. We see it all the time. It's open, simple, easy to animate. It's where the family gathers, watches TV, plays games. It's safe, predictable, almost like the house wants you to focus there. Same with the kitchen, same with Peppa's bedroom, same with George's room. But then there are rooms that feel like glitches, rooms that get mentioned once, and then quietly disappear. The cellar is the biggest example, but it's not the only one. There are episodes where characters refer to storage, cupboards, or places to put things away, and the space implied by those lines doesn't really exist visually. You never see these rooms clearly. You never get a proper layout. It's like the house only reveals as much as it wants to. Which is strange, because Peppa Pig is usually very literal. If something exists, the show loves showing it, unless it doesn't want you to think about it. And that brings us to the stairs. Peppa's staircase is one of the weirdest parts of the house once you actually pay attention to it. From the outside, the house barely has enough width to support a staircase going up. And yet inside, the stairs are wide, comfortable, and lead to multiple rooms with space between them. That shouldn't work. There isn't enough horizontal space in that triangle for what we're seeing upstairs, which suggests something uncomfortable. The upstairs is bigger than the footprint of the house, meaning either the rooms extend beyond the visible walls, or the house is folded in on itself in ways we're not meant to notice. And the show quietly reinforces this idea by never giving us a full floor plan. We never see all the rooms in one shot. We never get a clear, this room is next to that room moment. Everything is fragmented. You're always seeing one safe piece at a time. And that fragmentation gets even more suspicious when you look at Peppa's bedroom. Peppa's room should be simple. One child, one bed. But it isn't. She has a bunk bed, even after George gets his own room, which means the second bed has no official purpose anymore. And instead of removing it, the show does something very specific. It hides it. The bottom bunk is covered, curtained off, out of sight. That's a very deliberate choice, because if the bunk bed was no longer needed, it would be gone. This is a children's show. They simplify things constantly. But this bed stays. And when something stays without explanation, it's usually because it still matters. The curtain turns the bed into a secret, a space that exists, but isn't acknowledged, which fits perfectly with the overall pattern of Peppa's house. Visible enough to function, hidden enough to avoid questions. And Peppa's room isn't the only one with this problem. George's room is also interesting when you think about it. It's themed, intensely themed. Everything revolves around dinosaurs. And while that makes sense on the surface, it also turns his room into something very specific, a self-contained world. George can stay there for hours. He has toys, comfort, familiarity. It's almost like the house encourages separation. Each child has a designated zone, a controlled environment, which is exactly what you'd want in a house designed to manage chaos, especially in emergencies. And speaking of emergencies, let's talk about how calm this family is when things go wrong. Power cuts, storms, floods. Nobody panics. They don't scramble. They don't run around yelling. They don't act surprised. They act prepared, like they've done this before.
Ahoy there! Wonderful boating weather.
Yes.
We're sailing to the shops. Do you need anything?
Yes, please.
Mummy Pig knows where the torch is. Daddy Pig doesn't question it.
I think there's a torch in the cellar.
Okay, I'll go and get it.
Will you be okay, Daddy?
Oh, in the dark.
The kids treat disruptions like games, which would be adorable if it didn't feel rehearsed. This family behaves like they've practiced inconvenience, and that makes the cellar even more unsettling because cellars aren't just storage spaces. They're where you keep supplies. They're where you go when things outside aren't safe. They're where you wait. And Peppa's house having one, despite its size, suggests that survival was considered during its design. Which brings us back to the hill. Because hills don't just protect you from floods, they give you visibility. From Peppa's house, you can see everything. Other houses, the land, the water when it rises. It's a vantage point, which again makes Peppa's house feel less like a random family home and more like a central structure, almost like a lookout. And then there's the fact that Peppa's house is alone. No immediate neighbors, no shared boundaries. Privacy, isolation. Those are useful features if you don't want people asking questions, or if you want control. So when you combine everything, the impossible interior, the selective rooms, the hidden bed, the cellar, the calm reaction to disasters, the elevated position, you start to see a pattern. Peppa's house isn't built for everyday life. It's built to function under pressure, and that pressure doesn't have to be constant for the design to make sense. It just has to be expected, which raises an uncomfortable question. What exactly is Peppa Town preparing for? Because towns don't accidentally evolve into flood-resistant, hill-based, isolated housing systems. Someone plans that, and someone lives at the center of it. Once you stop looking at Peppa's house as a single strange building and start looking at it as part of a system, the entire town begins to feel different. Because Peppa's house isn't an exception, it's the template. Every family in Peppa Town lives the same way, alone, elevated, separated by hills instead of streets. There are no tight neighborhoods, no shared fences, no sense of crowding. Everyone has space, distance, visibility. That's not how towns usually grow. That's how towns are designed. In most places, houses cluster together for convenience. Shops nearby, schools within walking distance, neighbors close enough to shout across the street. Peppa Town doesn't do that. It spreads everyone out, which only really makes sense if proximity is considered a risk. Because when you isolate houses, you reduce how fast problems spread. Flooding, fires, illness, panic. Each family becomes its own unit, self-contained, protected, and Peppa's house sits higher than all of them. Not just physically, but symbolically. From that hill, Peppa can see everything. When floods happen, she sees the water rise first. When events happen in town, she's always involved, always present, always central. That alone is strange for a 4-year-old, but it gets even stranger when you look at how adults treat her. Teachers listen to her, parents defer to her opinions. Authority figures tolerate her behavior, and when she meets figures that should outrank her entirely, like royalty, she still isn't corrected. That's not how cartoons usually work. Usually kids learn lessons. Peppa rarely does. She leads, which makes the name Peppa Town feel less cute and more literal. This isn't just a town where Peppa lives, it's a town organized around her. And if you assume that, suddenly the layout starts to make sense. The biggest hill gets the biggest house. The most complex house gets the most hidden space. The central family gets the most preparation. Everything radiates outward. And now let's bring the house back into focus because there's one detail that ties all of this together. We never see Peppa's house change. Not really. Other buildings get updated, vehicles change, background elements evolve. But Peppa's house stays consistent. Same shape, same hill, same position. Even when it's rebuilt or renovated, it's rebuilt in place, which means the location matters more than the structure. You don't abandon that hill. You don't move downhill. You stay exactly where you are. And that's not something you do unless the spot itself is important. Strategically important, environmentally important, or historically important, because towns don't just choose a central high point randomly. Historically, hills are chosen for defense, visibility, and control. They're where you build castles, keeps, strongholds. Peppa's house isn't fortified with stone walls or towers, but it doesn't need to be. Its protection comes from preparation, from elevation, from isolation, from hidden space, and from a town layout that supports it. Now think about the flood episode again. The narrator announces it calmly, not dramatically, not urgently, just a fact.
The rain has made a flood.
And the characters react like this was always a possibility. No evacuation, no emergency response, no chaos. Just observation. That's not normal behavior unless flooding is expected. And expected disasters shape architecture, which means Peppa Town wasn't built after a flood, it was built for one. And if that's true, then Peppa's house being the most prepared structure in town isn't coincidence. It's priority. Which raises the biggest question of all. Why Peppa? Why is her family at the center of everything? Why does her house have the weirdest features? Why does her name label the entire town? Why does the world seem to bend slightly around her? One explanation is simple, she's the main character. But the show doesn't treat it like that. Inside the story, the world behaves as if Peppa's importance is real, recognized, accepted, which suggests that within Peppa Pig's universe, Peppa's family holds a role we're never directly told about. Founders, leaders, caretakers, or something even older. Because sometimes towns aren't named after people because of power. Sometimes they're named after people because of legacy. Because something started there, and Peppa's house, sitting alone on that hill, feels like the oldest structure in the entire town. It feels like the original point. Everything else feels added later, which would explain why it doesn't quite fit modern logic, why its layout doesn't match the outside, why it has features nobody else talks about, why it quietly holds on to details like a cellar, spare space, and hidden rooms. It wasn't built for comfort, it was built to last. So when you look at Peppa's house as a whole, it stops being a silly cartoon home and starts being something else entirely. A central structure, a prepared structure, a house designed with foresight. And Peppa herself? She grows up inside it, learning that this world listens to her, learning that her voice carries weight, learning that when she speaks, things happen, which might be why she's so confident. Not because she's spoiled, but because she's been raised in a place where leadership is normal. So maybe the hidden details of Peppa's house aren't just Easter eggs. Maybe they're world-building clues, hints that this town has a past we're never shown, a reason it's built the way it is, and a reason one little pig seems to stand above it all. Because once you stop seeing Peppa's house as just a backdrop, it starts to feel like the key to everything. And that leaves us with one final thought. If this is what the show lets us see, what parts of the house and the town are still hidden completely? And what happens when you finally start asking why? By now, Peppa's house doesn't feel strange because of one single detail. It feels strange because nothing ever catches this family off guard. Power cuts happen, and Mummy Pig doesn't search for a torch. She already knows where it is.
Just remembered. I think the torch is in the kitchen. Aha!
Storms roll in and nobody panics. Floodwater rises, and Peppa isn't scared. She's excited. That isn't luck. That's routine. This family behaves like these situations aren't surprises. They're expectations. And that makes one small detail impossible to ignore. The cellar. Because cellars aren't built for decoration. They're built for storage, shelter, and waiting things out. Yet Peppa's cellar is mentioned exactly once and then erased from the show's memory. No tour, no follow-up, no explanation. Just a quiet acknowledgement. And silence. The same silence surrounds the rest of the house. Guests don't wander. Friends stay in a few familiar rooms. Nobody ever says, Wow, your house is big. It's like there are parts of the house that simply aren't meant to be seen. And listen closely when you watch. For a house that's supposedly huge inside, you almost never hear distant sounds from other rooms. No footsteps, no echoes, no background noise drifting in. That suggests thick walls, sealed spaces, rooms designed to stay separate when needed, which brings us back to the hill. No fences, no gates, no visible security. Because the security isn't meant to be obvious. It's elevation, isolation, distance. The house doesn't need protection. The house is the protection. And that same logic applies to the entire town. Buildings are spaced apart. Crowds are rare. Everyone lives separately. Peppa Town isn't built for convenience. It's built to prevent everything from going wrong at once. And once you see that, Peppa's house stops feeling cozy. It starts feeling prepared, like it was designed with a future problem in mind. Peppa's house isn't just a cartoon background. It's a physics-defying, disaster-ready structure in a town built for survival. So what do you think is the most important hidden detail? The cellar? The hills? The impossible layout? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you enjoy uncovering hidden details and strange secrets in Peppa Pig, make sure to subscribe and check out the other videos. Because the more you look at Peppa's house, the more it feels like it was built for a reason.